Did you get Nadia flipping her hair in my face?
Sorry.
She went, whoop.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome on behalf of the Las Vegas chapter of the National Bar Association. My name is Zaniah Jordan, and I serve as one of the committee members of the Voting Initiatives and Outreach Committee, along with our chair, Jessica Smith-Peterson, Professor Frank Cooper, and Kelly Jones. So one of LVNBA's many missions is to promote and ensure a fair and just voting process. We encourage people to vote and become more knowledgeable about the candidates and the direct impact that voting has on their lives and the community. So the LVNBA thought it was very important to host the Meet the Candidates Forum in order to promote social dialogue among members of the bar and provide a space where members can learn more and ask questions about the candidates they will elect to sit on the Nevada judiciary. So oftentimes our friends and our family look to us in the legal community for who to vote for. So we really appreciate you guys for coming to become more informed about our lovely candidates. So with that being said, LVNBA is looking for poll observers for the upcoming election. If you want more information about it, you can speak to Jessica, and there's also an information sign-up sheet for the poll observing. Okay, so the agenda, so each candidate will have 5 minutes to talk about their platform, their goals, why they're best fit for the position. We are gonna time, I don't know how strict we are with time, but Professor Cooper is going to time each candidate so that it's fair. And the candidates will go in alphabetical order. So first we'll have Judge Cybill Dotson. Next will be Courtney Cara, then Augusta Massey, Judge Ellie Rouhani, and then Nadia Wood. After each candidate gets a chance to speak, there will be questions. We're going to collect all the questions from the attendees on Zoom, and if you guys have any questions here, I believe note cards were passed out. So that'll be the order. I will start with Judge Cybill.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Judge Cybill Dotson. First off, I'd like to thank you all for having me here today. I've been a member of the National Bar Association of Las Vegas chapter since, I believe, 2003 or 2004, so it's been quite a while. At one time, for those who don't know, I was actually the treasurer of this great organization for 4 years, 2 terms. It's always great to come back and have be involved in different events that the organization has. I am currently the sitting judge in Las Vegas Township Justice Court, Department 10. I am the newest judge in Las Vegas Township Justice Court. I was appointed by the Clark County Commissioners last October, and I took the bench in November 2021. I was appointed to the position after being vetted by the Judicial Selection Committee, and then I was placed in front of the Clark County Commissioners and voted unanimously in as the sitting judge. So I'm running now to retain my seat. Prior to being appointed, I was in private practice for about 18 years. I know I look young, but yes, 18 years. I did a wide variety of different, or practiced a wide variety of different areas of law. And since being on the bench, right now I listen to one of the 2 domestic violence tracks. I also over the Las Vegas Justice Court Community Court, which is our misdemeanor treatment court, and it handles low-level misdemeanors. And I always love talking about community court, so if you have any questions about community court, by all means, ask me, because it's great, and there's so much more we can do with it, and I'm excited to be involved in it. So a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio. I came to Las Vegas in 2003 after a friend said, hey, come to Vegas, because Vegas in 2003 was plenty of legal jobs then. So I came to Vegas and here I am, 19 years later. I don't regret it. I love Las Vegas and I love serving Las Vegas. I am a community service oriented person. I always have been. I grew up in community centers. I learned how to cook in a community center. I learned how to play air hockey in a community center. I learned the Negro National Anthem in a community center. So when I came to Las Vegas, it was very natural for me to find a community center where I can get involved. So what I did is I walked into Doolittle Community Center one day and I said, hey, I want to teach young girls how to twirl baton, because I was a majorette in high school and I love to twirl. Twirling brings me joy, and I love teaching young girls how to twirl because I believe it's a dying art. So for the next few years, that's what I did. I taught young girls how to twirl every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock at Doolittle. But getting involved with Doolittle and volunteering there, again, that was my way of becoming connected to Las Vegas, because I was new to Las Vegas and I knew I wanted to get out in the community. So that was my first foray into my community service here. Since then, I've been a member of several different organizations, the Urban League Young Professionals, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, and all different organizations that their sole mission is to make the community better, to make the community members better, to better their lives. And that's what I've always been about. So again, for me, becoming a judge is just an extension of my community service to this community. If I'm pretty much an open book, I tell people if you have any questions for me, by all means, if I can definitely answer it, I will do that. And I'm open to anything. So thank you very much. Actually, one more thing, if I have time. Okay.
You have 40 seconds.
40 seconds, okay. My goal on the bench, since I took the bench, is always to listen to people. I always want people to come into my courtroom when they leave to say, Judge Dotson listened to me, she heard me. They may not agree with my decision, but at least they can say, I listened to what they had to say, I contemplated it, I reviewed the law, I applied the law, and I came up with a just decision. So that's my goal. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Courtney Cara and I'm running for North Las Vegas Municipal Court Judge Department 2. A little bit about myself, I am not a Las Vegas native. I grew up in Inglewood, California in a neighborhood which was back then called the Bottoms. It was called the Bottoms because for two reasons. Number one, it's at the bottom of a hill, and number two, if you lived there, you were at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. It was a very poor neighborhood, very diverse neighborhood. And that's kind of where I initially learned about just working with people of different ethnicities. I then moved to Las Vegas in 2005, and I've been here ever since for the past 17 years. This has been home. I'm a graduate of William S. Boyd Law School, and since then, and so what that means is that my entire legal career has been spent working right here in Las Vegas for this community. Kind of to echo something that Judge Dotson said, community service has always been something that I have strived to do. I have been a volunteer basketball coach. I still am a volunteer basketball coach. Can't wait to get back to my kids this summer. I've been a volunteer baseball coach. And I've also been a volunteer truancy diversion judge with the Clark County School District 2014 until 2020 when the pandemic stopped all that. Why I think I'm the best fit for North Las Vegas Municipal Court is quite simple. North Las Vegas is the most diverse city that we have in the entire state. Not just this valley, the entire state. But when you look at the history of North Las Vegas Municipal Court, it has never had a black or brown person sit in that department. And I think it's time to change that. Now, why is that important? Representation is very important, and especially in a very diverse city, we need judges that can and want to relate to the people that are going to come before them. We need judges that are culturally competent. We need judges that have compassion, that have empathy, and will be accessible. One of the things that I think that every person up here and every other person out there seeking a public office is a public servant. You have to be willing and able to serve the public, and you have to be willing and able to continue to be a part of that community. Too often people, when they're running for office, you see them everywhere. You see them at events like this, you see them in parks, and then they get elected and they withdraw. I will not be that kind of judge. I will continue to be in the community because after all, how can I serve the community if I don't know what the needs of the community are? The needs of the community and the things I need to address in year one, I'm positive won't be the same in year 4 or 5. And so in order to do that, I have to continue to be out there. Experience is so important in a job like this, being a judge. Not only have I been a criminal judge, I've been a prosecutor and a defense attorney in a municipal court. I think that's super important. But also, I have handled divorce cases, custody cases, termination of parental rights, CPS cases, juvenile delinquency, TPO hearings, you name it, I've probably done it. And I think that's important because municipal court, there's a lot of crossover. It's not just about misdemeanor criminal cases. You do have cases that are going to affect family law cases, cases that may affect juvenile cases, cases that may have an effect on termination of parental rights cases and TPO cases. So I think it's important to have a judge that has that kind of experience. Someone asked me the other day, what would success look like to me? Success on the bench. For me, a successful tenure would be if I can bolster the Care Court program. Care Court is similar to what Judge Dotson described. North Las Vegas's version of community court. It's where individuals can have different underlying issues addressed. Mental health issues, substance abuse issues, a lack of resources. Crime is oftentimes a symptom of something greater. And I think in order to really keep the community safe, we have to address those underlying issues. Care Court is how we can do that. Locking people up doesn't work. We know that. We see the results of that. We have to get to the underlying reasons why people are committing crime. If we can solve those issues, we can truly keep the community safe because recidivism will go down. And so that's why, thank you, Judge Roohani. And so that's why, again, I think I'm the best candidate for this position. I have the experience, I have the drive, and I have the vision for the court that I think will make the city better. If you want to know more or you're out there and you want to look at my website while you're listening to us, it's www.CKETTER4judge.com. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Augusta Massey, and I am so happy looking at this room. As a lot of you know, I have been a part of the LVNBA since 2008, and I am the immediate past president of this wonderful, wonderful organization. Thank you to my board, the greatest board ever.
You brought your fan club.
I did. But I think it's a testament because they know the work it took for us to get here. They were in the trenches for 2 years with me, building back this organization. And it wasn't easy doing it in the middle of a pandemic. And so to see how much that we've grown and all the work and the things that have been accomplished, I just want to publicly say thank you to each and every one of you. I'm going to try not to be emotional. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said, I think I've worked with almost everybody in this room. And so I'm going to say some of the things that maybe some people do not know. But I think the people in this room probably know a little bit more about my story and who I am. I was originally born in Nigeria. I left after the death of my father. I came to the United States so I could start afresh. Unfortunately, my brother was killed by a drunk driver. This lady was drinking and driving at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She hit my brother 8 to 9 feet in the air. My brother's best friend, Malcolm, died on the spot, and my brother, Edgar, died in the hospital a couple of days later. And that was so tragic and traumatic, and it just killed the American dream for us. But through that process, we went and it opened up another door for me. I saw what the criminal system looked like, being a victim and having to sue the lady who killed my brother. I also had immigration going on in federal court because we were new immigrants. And also we decided to sue the city and take on the government because someone needed to be held accountable. So accountability matters to me. There were no speed bumps, no sidewalks, anything that would have slowed her down, and maybe my brother would still be alive today. But through that process, what I saw from good judges, bad judges, good lawyers, bad lawyers, was the impact that lawyers have on a community, the impact that judges have on a community, not just a family, but a community, and even up to generations. And so at that point, I have 2 engineering degrees, left out, went back to school, got an English degree, went back, got a law degree, and started practicing law because I am passionate about community, I'm passionate about helping families, and I'm passionate about justice. And so it's the very reason why I'm running. As the past president of the LVNBA, we saw a lot of issues. There are a lot of committees that we have today that were birthed out of those issues we saw in the pandemic. And one of the things that I saw was we need more representation from the judicial system. A little bit about, my professional experience. I have 14 years practicing as an attorney. Just like Judge Cybill said, I know I look like I'm 2. I started very early, but I have been practicing for 14 years. 10 of those years, I have run my own small law firm. And so I understand what it is to be effective and have a tight ship and to hire people and to fire people and to groom people and to make a system run. I have led this organization. Last year, we raised over $80,000. We gave away $40,000 in scholarships, never been done before. So these are just some of the things that I bring to the table and why I'm asking for your vote in this election. I have been teaching at CSN for the last 10 years. This semester I started teaching at UNLV. Anyone in the board can attest, I am really big on mentorship. I'm really big on lifting as I climb. I'm really big on making sure that we are positioned that the next generation, when we say representation matters, it doesn't stop with me. It includes all of us in this room and making sure that there's a pool of diverse attorneys and diverse candidates that can take us to the next generation. And then just lastly, I was just gonna mention that I have had to dispense justice. I have been a judge pro tem in justice court, so this will not be new to me. I'm running so that I can do this full time and bring my experiences to the court. So if you want to find out more about me, I always tell people it's easy to Google me because I have been out in the community. I have been in this community. But you can find out more about me on my website, www.augusta4nevada.com. So stay classy and vote for Massey in the primary. Thank you.
Going off that. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ellie Rouhani, and I am your judge in Department 11 District Court. I will not be on your ballot until November, so just remember everything and take it to you all the way to November. I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I am the child of religious refugees, and my parents left Iran shortly after the Iranian Revolution and the hostage crisis, when it was really not a great time to be a Persian person in the United States. But my parents left because the regime change was killing the Baha'is, that's our religion, in Iran. My parents had all their property confiscated. My mom was not able to get medical treatment for what they thought was cancer because she was a Baha'i. My father's family were landowners and they had all their land taken, and so this was a situation where my parents ultimately came to the United States with a single box of photographs that included the photo of my dad's best friend that the regime had killed. So I learned about my parents' sacrifice when I was in 6th grade. I never felt poor when I was a kid, but we were. And I think that is the benefit of growing up, honestly, in Las Vegas, because this community embraced us. This community raised me. I've been here since I was a year old. I've had all my schooling here. I graduated from Clark. Very proud to say that I'm a Clark Charger. And I stayed in Las Vegas despite having the opportunity to go elsewhere. Had the grades to go to, a better school or whatever that means. But I was committed to serving my community and I stayed here. So I went to UNLV for undergrad and I did go to Boyd for law school. So this is my home. This is my community. This is where I will stay for the rest of my life and I will raise my 2 daughters here. I even dragged my husband out from DC and made him come here and stay with me. So, but public service has been very important, it's been instilled because the recognition that this community is what gave everything to my family, it was constantly, it drilled into us, you have to give back to this community. So whether it was volunteering when I was a child in high school with Key Club and I'm still involved with Kiwanis, whatever it was, that was the focus of our entire family because we lived the American dream. We became successful because America embraced us. So after I left law school, I taught at the law school. I did bar support and I taught legal writing. And then I knew that I eventually wanted to clerk, so I went and I clerked with the Federal District Court with Judge Hunt, and I did a tour with all of our judges. And my life goal was to clerk with Judge Johnny Rawlinson, who I know that you all know. So Judge Rawlinson is my mentor, she's my hero. And so she took me on as her law clerk and really her spirit of public service, and I see Ellie Jones raising hands in the back.
You took my place.
Yeah. So the spirit of public service was something that was really, that's who trained me. That's who taught me what community service really looks like. After I left Judge Rawlinson, I went to the United States Attorney's Office and I became a prosecutor. And I think that it's important for you to know why I became a prosecutor. I had a conversation with the district court judge who had been a public defender and a DA, and she said to me, you could go to the federal public defender's office and do a great job, but you don't get to pick your clients. You gotta take whoever you get, right? She said, or you can go be a prosecutor, and you can decide what is a worthy prosecution. So if you really wanna make a change in this community, that's where you should go. And so I followed that advice. I went to the United States Attorney's Office. I prosecuted child sex crimes almost exclusively for 6 years. Sex trafficking, child pornography, et cetera, very difficult cases. But I felt like my legacy when I left there was influencing other prosecutions within the office and trying to make that office more culturally sensitive and aware of what the community looked like and what our community needed. I eventually left because my goals and motivations were not aligning with the administration. And so I knew that it was time for me to go because I wasn't being able to do the good that I wanted to do in the office. And so with Judge Rawlinson's urging, I applied to the vacancy in Department 11. I also went through the judicial selection process, and I, along with Carl Armstrong, who's also a member of the LVNBA, we went up to the governor, and Governor Sisolak appointed me to the bench. And one of the things that he said to me is, he goes, you're gonna be the first Southeast Asian judge in the entire state of Nevada, and that's important because representation matters. And so I was appointed to the bench. I've been sitting in Department 11 since earlier this year. Am I done? Almost done. I have a civil and criminal docket, and I hope to continue in this path of public service because it's important to have folks who know their community, and this is my community, this is my home. I'll be on your ballot in November, and I'd like your support. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Nadia Wood. I am running for Las Vegas Justice Court, Department 16. I am a public defender. I've been a public defender for over a decade now. I'm also an adjunct professor at Nevada State College where I teach criminal justice, 2 criminal justice courses. I also volunteer through Legal Aid of Southern Nevada with the Children's Attorney Project where I represent abused and neglected children in the family court. A lot of times in family court proceedings, the parents get representation. The government has representation, they have the district attorneys there, but the child doesn't get a say in anything, and the child doesn't have a voice. And so it's very special to me that I get to volunteer to go speak for the children. I get to talk to the children, see what they want, help them figure out what it is that they'd like to have said on their behalf in court and represent them in court. I've dedicated my career to public service. I just went to the University of California at Berkeley for undergraduate. I graduated at the age of 19. I then went to Georgetown University Law Center for law school, where I graduated at the age of 22. And I knew I wanted to be a public defender. I had no question in my mind what I was going to do, and I applied to public defender offices all across the country. And when I came out here and I saw the office that we have out here and the way it's set up, I absolutely fell in love, and I knew that this was where I wanted to be. The public defender's office out here provides so many resources and tries so hard to provide their attorneys with the training that they need to go out there and be effective and do good work. They provide social workers, they provide investigators, they make it so that you have the resources so that when you are representing people, you are giving them the right representation. It's not just people in a courtroom that are going by and not receiving the help that they need. And so I fell in love and I came out here. I've been out here for 11 years now. I met my husband here, we got married. This is my home. As I said, I have dedicated my career to public service. I am running because I believe that we need judges who are experienced, fair, and compassionate. Las Vegas Justice Court in general, is the people's court. That's what they call it colloquially. It handles civil matters that are less than $15,000. It handles landlord-tenant issues. All criminal cases start in justice court. Justice court is not the place that big business is litigating. It is the place that people, individual members of the community, that when they have experience and interaction with the court system, that's where they're most likely having their interaction. Statistically, your local justice of the peace is the elected official you are most likely to encounter. So it is incredibly important that we have judges who have spent their careers fighting for people, representing people, who when individuals walk into their courtroom, they see people. It's not just another number, it's not just another body. Every decision that is made has a huge impact on people's lives. In my over decade as a public defender, I've done dozens of felony jury trials. I've done over 150 evidentiary hearings in the court that I'm now running for. I've represented over 2,000 clients. That's on the criminal side. I've also represented victims of crime. And that's what makes me unique in my race. I am the only person in my race who has experience both representing people as a public defender and representing victims of crime. And I believe that that is what we need in our justices of the peace. We need people who are looking to balance public safety, because we all want to be safe in our homes. We all want the same thing. And I'm campaigning, part of that is getting to meet the members of the community and talk to members of the community. And public safety is a concern for everybody. But at the same time, we need judges who recognize that people are people and people go through things. And we need judges who are going to try to help people, who are going to try to focus on rehabilitation, drug treatment, mental health treatment, problem solving. We need to hold our courts accountable, because the system of just locking people up for a long period of time and then releasing them back into society with no assistance is not working. It's costing us money and it's making our society more dangerous, and it's completely removing the human element of recognizing that people go through things, and if we give them a hand and we help them, then we can help them reintegrate back into society and live their lives. I have dedicated my career to equal protection. I am the only attorney in Nevada, well, I was the first attorney in Nevada, to actually have a case reversed by the Nevada Supreme Court. I spent 7 years litigating underrepresentation on our jury pools. I'm sorry, is my time up?
It's about to be.
Oh, I'll take 30 more seconds. I spent 7 years litigating underrepresentation on our jury pools because our jury pools have not been representative of our communities. You go out in our community and we see so much diversity, and then you go into the courtroom and we see juries that don't look like us. And that is a problem, because that means people were not getting trials by their peers. And after 7 years of litigation, I'm the only attorney in Nevada who finally got the district court to acknowledge, we proved in an evidentiary hearing that Clark County has been systematically excluding African Americans from their jury pools. And I'm very proud of that. It took so many years of litigation, but I believe that it was necessary. We had to do it because we had to show, listen, We need to make sure that our community is represented in our jury pools. We need to make sure our community is represented in our courtrooms. My time is up. My name is Nadia Wood. I'll be the very last race on your ballot, so I hope you'll vote Nadia for Nevada. Thank you very much.
Oh, should I start?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so thank you to everybody for listening to the wonderful presentations of all the candidates that we've had here. One thing that we want to announce is that Judge Cybill Dotson is on the phone as part of the job, so she may have to duck in and out, and that's why she's not at the podium at the moment. We're going to give you some questions, and I'm going to read those out. Unless it specifies otherwise, the question is open to anybody who wants to answer. Try and take like 2 minutes or less. Be, as succinct as possible. Okay. So here's a question. What do you think appropriate judicial temperament looks like on the bench? And for sitting judges, obviously, you can describe what your temperament has been. Does anybody want to start?
Sure. As a judge, you need to be even-keeled. I think you have to recognize that when people are coming into court, court is intimidating. Court isn't the nicest place for most people, and so you're going to be seeing people and their emotions. Their emotions may be high, especially depending on the type of court that you're dealing with. Municipal court is a misdemeanor court, so it's a criminal court. People are coming in, they're nervous about going to jail, they're nervous about having a fine that they can't pay, and so you have to be able to take all of that into account. And I think as a judge, you just have to kind of recognize at the end of the day, give people some grace. It's not their finest hour when they're coming to a criminal court, and so you have to understand that and give people grace.
Anyone else?
So,
I guess I should have passed that
sorry.
down before.
I've been picking a jury for a few days, so I'm losing my voice from having to project in the courtroom. I think that patience is key for a judge and remaining open-minded. I think that that's one of the things that people appreciate the most is just having the opportunity to have their voices heard. Obviously, the civil litigators, they want me to start on time, which I always say if I'm not there 15 minutes early, my mom says that I'm late, and I try to keep to that. But also, I think it's the judge's role, both in terms of temperament, to keep the energy in the courtroom really good, both in terms of controlling the staff and the marshals and everyone else. So we try to keep the energy positive and lower energy than in a higher sort of schizophrenic energy in our courtroom. And I say our courtroom because I really do feel that this is, the courthouse is for the people. This is their home. They pay for it and they are allowed to come and do whatever they need to do in there. So we try to match the energy that we want to see out in our society. I think starting on time, they obviously want a smart judge, but in terms of temperament, I think patience is probably key.
Go ahead. I think judges need to understand that they're public servants, and I think Courtney touched on this a little bit. I mean, judges should always behave with dignity and decorum. People are coming into the courtroom, they have entrusted you with a great deal of responsibility and power, and you should treat everybody who comes into the courtroom with dignity, with respect. Judges shouldn't be yelling at people. I mean, we see some things, some judges are fantastic and some judges are not. They're human just like everybody else, but the reality is when you're elected judge, you don't get to do that in the courtroom. It shouldn't be raising their voice, you shouldn't be yelling at people, it shouldn't be rolling your eyes, being sarcastic towards people. People are going through things, and a courtroom is never, like you said, a positive place, and a judge behaving not judiciously does not help the situation at all.
So I agree with everything that the panelists have said. What I will add though is that you see some of the best people on the worst days of their life. You see them at a point where they're emotionally charged, they're going through a lot of them are scared, a lot of them are anxious, a lot of them do not understand the process, a lot of them are dealing with a lot of stuff. Half the time they are not even listening to you or cannot even hear you because they waited maybe months, sometimes even years to get in front of you to have this one shot to be able to tell you their side of things. And so for me, it's, trying to slow things down, observing proper protocol. But many times as I've dealt with them, I have told people to breathe. I've told people to breathe. I don't know if I should do this, but sometimes I crack a joke just so they can let their guard down. They can, reset and get back into, okay, this is why I'm here and this is what I want to do. People want people who understand them. And I can't remember who said it, but they said, people might not remember what you did to them or what you said to them, but they will remember how you made them feel. And when they leave my courtroom, I want them to feel like they were heard. And part of that is adjusting your temperament and making sure that you are open to the people in front of you.
All right, so we have a few general questions, but this one is a three-part specific one, and it's sort of aimed at various of you at various points. So I'm gonna read, it's gonna be a long thing. So,
Take notes.
right. District Court Judge and Judicial Candidate. Many youth offenders are being transferred to the Adult District Court. How would you review a youth offender case, and would you transfer a case back to the juvenile justice system? If so, what factors would you consider to return such a case? That's number one. Number two, as a district court judge for a criminal calendar, a lot of cases will be sentencing cases. How will you consider the mitigating factors when sentencing defendants who appear before you? Number three, Justice Court. And for the Justice Court is responsible for hearing criminal preliminary hearings. How do you define scintilla of evidence when determining probable cause for a case? And for the municipal court candidate. But it's good that you all got pens. How will your judicial term handle misdemeanor fines and fees of people who appear before you? Many of the people who appear before you are at the bottom of the socioeconomic system. And so how do you plan to deal with that? Right, so each of you kind of has, I think, one that you can answer.
So the question I think that was directed to me was with the criminal sentencings, what are the mitigating factors that we consider? Something that I say every single time I have a criminal calendar without fail is our job as public servants is to make sure that we are setting up our community members for success. And this is particularly important to me because I have a family member who is a drug addict in recovery now, but had significant contact with the criminal justice system and was never provided the services that he needed through the criminal justice system and ultimately ended up in federal prison because our state system failed him. So in terms of mitigating factors, the things that I look at are largely what can we do to help this person that when they, 5 years from now, and they are my neighbor, that they are the type of person that I want to live next to. Some of our folks mentioned we have serious mental health problems in our community that are not being addressed. We have serious drug abuse issues in our community that are not being addressed. And that results in significant contact with the criminal justice system. So mitigating, if a person is committing themselves to treatment, they're going to get a chance. That's not to say that people don't need punishment, but we know what happens in prison. They go and they sit in prison, they have their time out, and they come back out either as better criminals or having not changed at all. And so we can take the opportunity to fix the problem, or we can take the opportunity to punish. And so I would like to my personal preference is to fix the problem for the long term. So I think in terms of mitigating, that's what I look at.
Thank you. So I think there's two parts that I can answer as a justice court candidate. One is the youth offenders who end up getting transferred to the adult system, and the other is the scintilla of evidence that was mentioned. So I'm going to start with the youth offenders. I have actually represented multiple juveniles who were certified to be tried as adults. Most people are not aware, but there's actually a part of the statute that allows the adult court to send a case back to the juvenile court. If the attorney for the juvenile, it's not the appeal, there's also an appeal process where they can appeal the certification, but there is a separate process wherein the attorney for the juvenile can apply to the court and just ask the court to find that there's certain circumstances that allow for the case to be sent back. So that is something that exists and I think people need to be more widely aware of it. And I've never actually seen it happen thus far. I've never seen a single judge in adult court send a juvenile back. I certainly can't say how I would rule on any particular case. I would apply the law to the facts of the case, but that is a law that's out there. That is something that I think our attorneys need to be looking at more and applying for more, because there are circumstances where, new information comes out after the certification, or there's mitigating factors, or there's all sorts of reasons why it would be appropriate for a case to be sent back to the juvenile court, even if it has been certified. As to the standard of evidence for preliminary hearings in justice court, I do not mean to be disrespectful, but the standard is actually not a scintilla of evidence. It is probable cause. Oftentimes, colloquially, people refer to it as slight or marginal evidence, but that's actually not the standard either. Pursuant to statute, the standard is probable cause, which is defined as more evidence for guilt than against it. There was one case that came down from the Nevada Supreme Court in which they found that slight or marginal evidence could satisfy the probable cause standard. That case involved the facts were that there was a single fingerprint was the only evidence. And so they said, okay, it's slight or marginal, but it's a fingerprint. And so that can satisfy probable cause. So I think a lot of times we allow that to be glossed over and we allow it to be called a slight or marginal evidence standard. But again, I think we need to be holding the government to their burden, which is probable cause, more evidence for guilt than against it. Thank you.
All right, and I'm just gonna echo everything Nadia said, there's not too much to add. The only thing I'm gonna point out though is that for my department, it is actually a civil department. There are about, I think we have if you win your election, you will be in the new department that was just created. Right now, we have about 2 civil departments in the entire justice court system, and the rest are all criminal. So a lot of those cases may not come before me in this department unless things change. And that's the only thing I'm gonna add to her answer, which is brilliant. Thanks.
So I think my question was about fines and fees in municipal court. There are very few cases in municipal court that have statutory minimums. And so what that means is that as a judge, you have a lot of discretion when it comes to the cases that don't fall under those statutory minimums. One of the things that I do now as a public attorney in municipal court, which is why I think it's important to have a judge with that kind of experience, is I try to get creative when I have clients that I know are lacking resources, don't have money. I had a client today, for example, who he was charged with something, said he wanted to pay a fine, complete a class. Well, he has documentation showing that he has dementia. He's not going to be able to get through this class. He's not going to be able to pay this fine. And so I was able to propose a disposition for the case that would, A, allow him to avoid those things, and B, ultimately do what we all want, which is keep the community safe. And I kind of want to echo what Judge Roohani said at the beginning is, as a judge, you don't want to see people get set up for failure. And I think that's one of our biggest jobs, I think, especially in a criminal department, is you don't want to see people get set up for failure. If I have someone that I'm looking at them and I know that they're not going to be able to pay that $1,000 fine, I've got to take that into consideration. If I'm looking at someone and I know that they have a serious substance abuse issue, why not address that underlying issue? And I think that's what, as a judge, we're not just there to just receive, just take in everything that comes before us, every plea deal. You've got to ultimately remember your job is to serve the community and keep the entire community safe. And that includes defendants. Defendants are still part of the community. And I think too often we forget that.
I may need to hear the question, I'm sorry. And for anyone, I think some people in the room already know, but the reason I had to step out is I'm actually on call So if my phone rings, I have to actually step out and take that call. So if someone wants to.
Okay, so this will be a fun one.
Or we can go on to another question.
All right, if you could have a conversation with anyone, living or not, who would it be and why? What would you ask or convey to that person?
Oh, don't ask me first.
Yeah, but good luck.
It's a Cybill though, she hasn't.
You want to go? Go ahead.
You know, you asked that question, and I'm sorry, I'm such a family-oriented person that my mind goes straight to family. I don't know, we're in a different setting now, but I start thinking about my grandparents. See, this is not a good question, because it will make me emotional.
Feelings.
But I start thinking about my family and what they had to endure for, for me to get where I am. So it's kind of like I started thinking about my grandmother, my dad's father, who I never met, who died before I was even born. But even my grandmother that I grew up with, who now has dementia, and she doesn't even know I'm a judge because she knows I'm an attorney. She went through law school with me, she knows all that. But if my grandmother, who's still alive, knew that I was a judge, oh my goodness, my grandmother would be over the moon. So, I'm sorry. So thinking about who I want to talk to, it's more personal there. I would want to speak to my ancestors to let them know that their struggle was not in vain, that here I am, a judge, a sitting judge. I'm sorry.
She's just sharing her own.
I'm sorry. But for them to know that their struggle was not in vain. And I'm living proof of that. So, I'm sorry.
I think mine is probably gonna be along those same lines. My mom is my hero, and when I talked to her about just, family history, she talked about my grandfather, who I never had a chance to meet, and he was a sharecropper in Alabama, and at one point just was tired of the treatment and the racism that he had to endure in Alabama, and so picked up and moved to Florida, and that's where he met my grandmother and my mom, and all of her 14 siblings were soon to follow. And so I would love to talk to him and thank him for having the strength to make that decision to pick up and get himself into a better situation. We talk so much in this country about, hard work. If you just work hard, you can do anything, you can have anything. And that's not the reality. The reality is you need opportunities. And most of us have to create those opportunities. They're not handed to us, they're not gifted to us. We have to put ourselves in a position to grab those opportunities, and you usually don't get many at that. So I want to talk to him and tell him thank you, and let him know that what he did set up our family for success, and all that we have is because of his strength.
Thank you. As soon as this question came, I was like, immediately, because this is something that I've been thinking about lately, and I immediately wrote down my dad and my brother. My dad, because of how he was killed violently, and my brother too. And I would ask them if they were proud of me. The things that happened to me based on what happened to them gave me purpose, gave me a new love for America, gave me a new love for people, opened my eyes to see how you can help people. And I'm always supporting, I'm always pushing others. And so I would ask them, were they proud? I will thank them for purpose, and I will ask for more guidance on how to be better and to contribute more.
I would love the opportunity to speak to my grandmother again. I was blessed to be the granddaughter of feminists who were born in a time and a place that feminism was not appreciated. My parents are both immigrants from Iran. My grandmothers were born in 1919 and 1920 in Iran. My grandmother, my father's mother, was the daughter of a very prominent man. And he had very specific ideas about what his daughter's life should look like, specifically that she should have an arranged marriage. He was going to pick her husband for her, and she was going to bring honor to the family by making a good match and all of that kind of stuff. And she did not want to do that. And so she snuck away in the middle of the night and had saved up a little bit of money and caught a bus, went to a different city, and worked, and decided she was going to go to school, which again was pretty incredible for where she was and who she was, and put herself through school, and then decided she wanted to be a lawyer and went to law school. It is, a lot of people talk about, and it's so incredible to be the first person who goes to college in your family. The first person who went to college in my family, literally, I think was the only woman in law school at that time. She was incredible. And I'm so blessed the battles that she fought, because she instilled that in her children, and I didn't have to fight those battles with my father because she raised her sons to believe very firmly in equality for women. She chose her own husband in law school, and she was always she was our number one cheerleader. She loved all of her children and grandchildren, but her granddaughters, she always told us, what you have is, don't ever take it for granted. I think the same thing. Our ancestors have fought hard for us to be where we are. And so I would love for her to have been able to see that I was running for judge. I think that would have been really special for her.
I just want to say, I think it's telling that all of us are picking people who are close to us, family members, not, historical figures. And I think it's important for people of color to have heroes that are close to them, that we can see ourselves in our family. And so just as a commentary. I would, as I've been sitting here and listening, I'm going back and forth between my grandfather, my dad's dad, who I never met. He was killed in Iran for being a Baha'i in front of his youngest son, and my youngest uncle had to bring his body back to my grandmother. I never knew him. I never met him. This was long before I was born, long before my parents had ever even met. But I would ask him, are you proud? Did we do okay? What could we have done better? What did you wish for us that we did do, and what did you wish for us that we were not able to achieve and that we could try to achieve? The other option that I had was my in-laws. So my husband's father, who died of a heart attack after miraculously recovering from leukemia, and then his mother, who I'm convinced died of heartbreak 11 months after he passed. They never got to meet our youngest daughter, so I think family is important. I think it's important to all of us. And so I would ask them, are we doing okay raising our kids? Because she fights kids at school, so I need to know, what can I do better? She's 2, in fairness, and I think that's like going around in her class. But I think it's important for our children to also know their families.
I think that's a wrap. Does anybody want to say anything from the leadership team? That's a wrap. Thank you so much. Let's mingle and talk. Thank you to all the candidates, and thank you to the folks that organized, Jessica and Zaniah and everybody. So let's go.